Welcome back, everyone, to another powerful episode of AI Biz, where we explore the intersection of clarity, courage, and creating impact in the real world. So, the listeners, now tell me this: ever felt like your ideas are too big for your legal budget? Or every step forward in business comes with a legal landmine that no one warned you about? Or have you ever wondered, if you are building something brilliant only to realize you forgot to protect it, right? Great questions, right? So, if you're nodding right now, then today's episode is your golden ticket because we are joined by someone who speaks fluent innovation legally, technically, and strategically. So, please meet Jeff Holman. So, welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here, Avik.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Jeff. So, Jeff is the founder of Intellectual Strategies and the brilliant mind behind the fractional legal team model. So, he's an engineer, an attorney, an MBA, and an entrepreneur, all rolled into one basically the Swiss Army knife your startup wished it had on day one. So, for over 2 decades, he has helped founders and leaders innovate with the confidence, uh, transforming the legal headaches into strategic clarity, whether it's tech, trademarks, or traction. Jeff helps scaling companies protect when they build while still moving fast. So grab a notebook because today's episode isn't just smart, it's strategy meets sanity. So welcome to the show again, Jeff.
Great. That was a great introduction. You added some stuff that was wonderful. I love the last part, strategy meets sanity,
Yeah,
and earlier you mentioned landmines and stuff like that.
yeah,
That's my language.
yeah. Lovely. That's amazing. Yeah. So Jeff, most founders either overlook legal step or get paralyzed by it, right? So how can entrepreneurs shift their mindset from fear or avoidance to seeing legal as a strategic asset?
Oh, that's a fantastic question.
Mhm.
You might know that my slogan that I use,
Mhm.
in my law firm is innovate with confidence. So we're all about helping innovators overcome the fears that go along with creating and launching new things. Um, so overcoming fear. I'll start here. I've got seven different branches we could go, but let me start here. I think that
Mm.
the goal of every innovator, every founder, every startup CEO, or um, you know person launching a new business is to gain an advantage by learning to operate like somebody who's been down that road before. And of course, when it's your first time down that road, just like when it's your first time hiking up a mountain, you haven't been down that trail before.
Yeah.
But how do you get the advantage of knowing what's coming up, knowing where the turns are, knowing where the landmines are, as you mentioned? How do you operate in your startup as a second time founder when you're really only a first time founder? That's the goal that we're going
Mhm.
for.
Mm. Oh, that's amazing. That's really amazing. So, I mean, when did you personally realize that law wasn't just about protection, but the power?
Oh, I was probably I did patents for a long time for companies like IBM and Intel. I went out to Silicon Valley. I worked for these large companies and then a few smaller startup companies on the side, but they just didn't fit in very well into the business model of just kind of pumping out and grinding, lots of billable
Mm.
hours for these big companies. Um,
Mm.
but several years into my practice, I said to myself, I'm just helping, IBM put one more patent into their portfolio. And they were getting like 7,000 patents every year for 30 or 40 years. I mean, it's an amazing feat in and of itself, but wasn't really my jam. And then I looked at other clients. I have a client, um, his name's Balky, and he was, working on alternative energy solutions. He's a PhD and he's super smart guy, and he's getting funding to build these little quarter scale, half scale prototypes. And he's I'm watching him and I'm like, how come I'm only helping Balky do his patents? How come I'm not working on the university technology licensing? How come I'm not working on the outside funding? How come I'm not setting up his business? Like there's so much more to the startup world than that just inventing something, right? It's just like
Mm,
just like the difference between inventors and entrepreneurs. Inventors, and I work with a lot of them, and they're very smart people. The inventor mindset really is one of usually finding an idea, tinkering with it, and maybe filing a patent, maybe making a prototype, and often not much more than that. Getting outside of the technology aspects of the project becomes really difficult and undefined, and people struggle with that. Whereas an entrepreneur says,
mm,
sure, there's the technology, and I got to figure out how to build it, but maybe even before I build it, I got to figure out how to sell it. Who's my market, and,
mm,
and and there's so much more that goes into it. How do I fund this if I do want to build it? So I think early on, I realized there was so much more to building a business than simply protecting an idea. That's part of it, and it's important, but it's only one
mm.
piece.
Got it. Lovely. And like so you are known for translating between the worlds of law, tech, and the business. That's rare, definitely. So how do you balance these perspectives when advising founders, especially in the early stage chaos?
I mean, it's answering with the right information at the right time, and
Mm,
talking to people in the way that is the best way to communicate with them, right? So, yeah, I went and got my MBA after I had my law degree, after I had my engineering degree, and I think the best thing I took away from that, uh, I learned a lot, made a lot of great connections, but one of the things that
mm,
tops the list is just having the vocabulary, because when you're talking with the executive team at a business,
mm,
the sales team, for example, speaks a very different language and is motivated very differently than
mm,
the technology team in a business, or the HR team in a business. We all know
mm,
they speak different languages, they have different objectives, they sometimes have different personalities and add different aspects to the
mm,
company culture. So, um, to me, it's just a result of having kind of been down different paths and experienced those things from different perspectives, and then realizing, wow, I am kind of in a unique position to be able to sit here and, you know, help HR understand what the sales guys are trying to do, and help the sales guys understand what the tech team is working on, so that, everything kind of flows together, and then help the executive team who's got these big audacious goals, try to accomplish those within the constraints of the other people in the business. And so I found myself often um, just helping businesses facilitate communication among the team.
mm. Got it. Yeah. And also like uh from your praise sheet. I know that I know you cover a lot, like from IP to contracts to strategy. So,
Mhm.
what are the top seven mistakes you see startups and scaling companies make when and that stall their momentum?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So the top mistakes that startups make. First of all, and this is the most boring of all of them, but it's the most important, and that's documenting things. Founders are doing so many things, wearing so many hats, that they're moving so fast. The common phrase, break things, and sell things, right? That's all they're really trying to do. But the thing that happens, the first thing that we have to tackle when we come into a business, that we have to fix, is documentation. We come to a business, because most businesses, let's face it, they don't hire us when they should hire us up front. They hire us after there are problems, and after they can't avoid those problems any longer. Maybe they've been sued by an employee. Maybe they're trying to, fix some documents so they can bring investors on board. But documentation is the number one thing that small businesses don't get right and don't do in a complete way uh, from the beginning. And everybody's there. You're not alone. That's the number one thing. The second thing is is sort of related to that, but we see a lot of issues that come up in two areas because documentation hasn't been done properly. First of all, there are always going to be employee issues. Um, People hire their friends because they like to work together, and they don't document that correctly. Then the friendship doesn't work out. The founders separate. The employer, the CEO lets the assistant go or the employee go, and it's not documented correctly. And inevitably, small businesses, until they get this process down correctly, they run into these problems with employment. Meaning,
Mm,
if you're on forums on Facebook and you see people post, "Hey, my employer did this," 80% of the people that respond are going to be like, "Go file with your state unemployment office." And there's a lot of animosity towards small businesses a lot of times because employees don't feel like they've been treated fairly. And that's just a result of not documenting employment issues properly or following employment things. The other side of that where we see the lack of documentation play out a lot is with founders. I've got a client that I was talking to recently. They have an awesome business. It's a small retail store. They've been doing, they some of these clients, when they tell me how much revenue they're doing every month, I'm shocked. I'm like, that's fantastic. I wouldn't have thought that that small store did that much revenue. And so they're doing really, really well revenue wise, but they're three founding partners, and they had a split. At some point in the process, they realized that one of the partners was really difficult to get along with, and always wanted to go a different direction. Well, that not only is a problem culturally, but if you don't put your documents together correctly up front. For example, these founders basically said, any big decision we make in the business, we have to have unanimous consent. We have to have everybody vote and everybody has to agree or we won't do it. Well, that's fine as long as everybody is always on the same page. But as soon as one founder says, "No, I don't agree with that. I don't want to do that," they, in that scenario, they can block things like, entering into a new lease or opening up a new store or hiring an employee. They can even block they can block the other partners from separating from them or competing against them. So now this founder group is stuck where one founder doesn't want to be bought out. The other two founders don't want to continue working with the one founder, and nobody can do anything about it. And so it becomes a stalemate, and nobody's happy. Everybody's fighting, and there are ways to put provisions in place. In this case, in your operating agreement for your limited liability company, you can put those in place up front if you do it in a smart way and you document it. But without the documentation, or if you document but you don't include the right language, then these things happen. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most unfortunate scenarios for small businesses is founder disputes where the corporate governance of the limited liability company haven't been set up correctly, and a founder dispute can, you know, nobody wants to kill the company, but that's effectively what happens to a lot of these companies. They die because they don't have the right voting structure in place or the right legal language in place to operate the business. And then other things that shouldn't be problems become problems and impede the business from even existing sometimes. So, which is sad to see. There's a couple mistakes that we see pretty often.
okay, okay. And okay, and then like if I have to say it this way, like your guiding principle is innovate with confidence, right? So
Yes.
for someone who is building something bold right now, maybe scared of the unknown. So what does that look like in the real life? What do you have to say?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's something that I've seen innovators get stuck so many times that they have a part of a project that they really like. That, they like I mentioned before, they like to tinker, but they don't want to do sales, or they want to, call somebody about licensing their invention, but they don't really want to even have a phone call. They want to check the box, say they called, and hope that someone's going to license from them just because they left a voicemail. But they don't necessarily want to take the next steps and talk to people or whatever. And so, from what I've seen, there really are I call them the four fears of innovators, right? There are four things that keep people from wanting to move forward. And we all have them. We all run into them in different ways in our lives and our businesses. And they're things like fear of loss, right? Maybe we're gonna, maybe as an innovator, maybe I'm going to share my invention with somebody and they're going to steal it, right? Or I'll share my business idea with someone and they're going to steal it. And so we don't share it, and we don't take action on it because we're afraid somebody will steal what we're going to do. Um, Sometimes there are other fears that go along with that. So, but the bottom line is that with these fears, no matter what type of fear it is, um, what the conclusion I came to was that fear is really always based in the future. It's always us thinking and overthinking the things that might happen in the future. And we're never afraid of the things that have already happened because they've happened. We might not like the results. We might wish something had gone differently. We might even be mad or happy or whatever about where we're at now. But whatever's happened, we don't fear it, right? We have, if nothing else, we have the knowledge and we have the confidence that we know what will happen in that situation. And so when I talk to people who seem to be at a roadblock, where maybe anxiety or fear or something is keeping them from making decisions, for example, I, I I always go back to the same thing, and that is action is the key to getting rid of fear. Now, you may not know, and some people are afraid. They're like, "Well, I'm afraid that someone's going to steal my idea, and so I'm not sure if I should get a patent, or if I should talk to somebody, or if I should, you know, find founders, or do something else. I'm not sure what to do because I'm afraid of what might happen." The key is to do something, and you might choose a good path or not a good path, but the reality is once you choose a path and you start to take action, there's nothing more to be afraid of. Like, the fear disappears. You turn fear into reality, eh, in the sense that action, in the present, removes all any need for there to be fear of the future. So there's a lot of there are a lot of times with clients where they call me with an issue and they're like, I'm not sure what to do. For example, a lot of people say, um, in the patent world, right? A lot of people starting up will file what's called a provisional patent application, and it's just a placeholder. It's good for 12 months. And a lot of people do that while they're validating their technology or they're validating their market. And then within that 12-month period, if you decide that this innovation is worth pursuing further, you can file what's called a non-provisional utility application. And that's the one that would get examined by the patent office and eventually, hopefully, become an issued patent. Um, what we find, though, is people will file this provisional. They'll do some of the work, during that 12-month period. You never get as far as you want because, life happens. And we call them and we say, hey, you've got this deadline. Do you want to file your non-provisional at the 12-month mark? And they get really hesitant because they don't know for sure what they should do. Now, my my role, I believe, in this is to first educate people as to what kind of the options are, and then second, educate them as to what maybe the risks and benefits of those options are. And if that's enough for them to make a decision and start to take action, great. I'm happy to leave that in their hands. But a lot of times that's not enough. And so sometimes I also feel that there's a leadership aspect to my role, being an attorney working with people who haven't been down that path before. They're first time founders and they're looking to me to be their guide to what a second time founder might do. And so I'll step one step further with them and I'll say, hey, I've given you the information. We've talked about the risks and the opportunities. In your situation, let me give you my recommendation. And here's what my recommendation is, right?
Mm,
Oftentimes my recommendation in that scenario is if they haven't done enough with their patent and their business to validate the technology, validate the market, and make a and kind of de-risk the costs associated with moving forward, because costs start to pile up right when you go from this provisional to a non-provisional patent application.
mm,
I'll often say, I think that in your situation, based on what you have and haven't accomplished so far, you might be best off not moving forward. Um, and so I go from information to risk to an actual recommendation for people. And it's not always to not move forward. Sometimes it's, hey, you seem like you're doing great. You should move forward, or yes, you should hire that person, or maybe yes or no, you should or shouldn't take money from this investor. Um, but giving a recommendation empowers people to some degree, I believe. It helps them, they don't have to listen to what I say. I'm just one voice. I have, a lot of experience, but I'm not always right, and I'm not always right for every individual, right? And so I give a recommendation. I tell them why that's my recommendation, and I think that helps to move them a bit further towards taking action. Because in the end, that's really all that I'm looking for with them. I'm like, what I want is to help them become more confident, and they become more confident by taking action. And my recommendation is one proposal for action, but it's not the only one. But but it's something that I think people value getting a recommendation from their attorney as opposed to just getting a memo that outlines you know the possible options. That's not very helpful. So
that's amazing. Yeah.
that's my long monologue on for innovators, and how to dispel that fear.
Mm, that's amazing. Yeah, definitely. So also like what advice or something you want to share with the listeners today?
Seek out advice from people who've been down that path before you, right? That's the number one thing that somebody can do and should do. And we get I see a lot of people. There's a
Mm,
spectrum. You get some people who are brash, and they'll do whatever they want to whenever they can. uh they move forward, they'll sell stuff they don't own, that like they're very, very, very aggressive, right? But then you get people on the other end of the spectrum that are very timid, and they're hesitant to move forward and do things.
mm,
Um and so the the thing that I think people should be doing, whether whether your tendency is to be aggressive and move forward kind of ignorantly, perhaps, or to be timid and not move forward at all. My advice is to seek out people who can help guide you through that path that you want to be down. Right. If I were going to start a podcast, might come to somebody like you and say, "Hey, Avik, you've been down this path. You're a little bit ahead of me, or maybe pretty far ahead of me. And what are some things that I should be aware of?" And and entrepreneurs and business owners, people looking to start businesses, you have a lot of those options available to you if you're willing to reach out, make connections, and take advantage of those. Whether that's, the SBA resources that are out there, local and state level economic development agencies, other founders, friends who've been down that path, legal and financial advisors who, we counsel people who are doing this all day, every day. And so we see a lot of it and have a lot of exposure to these things. So you can find mentors, you can find advisors, you can find friends, and nothing needs to be official necessarily up front, but to find somebody and ask them, hey, I'm looking to do something like this. What's been your
mm,
experience? Or, what would you recommend for me? That to me is maybe second after planning to document everything you're doing. Look for advisors who can help you understand what it's like to have to look further down the path, look around the corners that you haven't traveled past yet.
Understood. Yeah. Lovely. So, Jeff, I mean, this has been not just enlightening but empowering because you have helped us see the legal not as a barrier but as a blueprint for the bold move. So, uh, for all the listeners, like whether you are a startup founder, a creator, or just someone sitting on a big idea, then remember this: that confidence is not built in the absence of risk, but it's built in the presence of clarity. So go check out Jeff's incredible resources and his press sheet packed with the topics that will make your brain light up and your business breathe easier. So with this hope, until next time, keep building boldly, thinking strategically, and protecting what matters. So stay curious, stay legal, and as always, stay healthy in mind and life. So thank you so much.